So hi everybody, I'm Piotr Adamczyk from the Google Cultural Institute. Used to be on the other side of the fence at a museum in New York, and now for the past couple of years I've been working on kind of first the back-end systems and increasingly kind of in what Google calls a program manager role, which is working a lot with partners and thinking about new features that we develop and work on the site. Two of my colleagues in the back, Kate Lauterbach and Julian Sinek, they're both back there. And then AG also, who's been helping us at the booth. I'm guessing he's napping. We're all based in London or in Paris. That's where the Cultural Institute is, at least right now. Fingers crossed we'll have more people in the States eventually. If you brought your cardboard, good. If you didn't, that's fine too. We'll go through a quick introduction basically of the Cultural Institute, because what we figured out yesterday is even the people who are members or partners or are working with us on the Cultural Institute could definitely use a bit of a refresh, and then some people don't know. We've been adding a lot of features and functionality to the site that I can actually speak about now publicly. The last couple of times I've been able to talk to an audience, we've had to keep it a little bit more quiet, so it's been all right. If you go to g.co/cardboard, you come to this page. This gives you the introduction in terms of how to put together your cardboard. You open it, and then you just fold it up into a ViewMaster. Yeah, sure. If we can, yeah, thanks, Sid. So again, if you go to g.co/cardboard, it gives you the quick little visual introduction in terms of how to put it together. It's really just a ViewMaster. I'll talk a little bit more about what went into its design in a little bit, but if you have it and you want to start playing with it now, that would be great. If you have an Android phone, there's an app that contains a lot of the demos built in. If you have an iPhone, that's fine. There's another website you can go to. It's g.co/ChromeVR. All you have to do is prop up your iPhone with a pencil on the bottom, because the iPhone's a little bit thinner than most of the Android phones. So at the very bottom of your cardboard, where you see that phone going in, where the rubber band is, just put a pencil there and then put your iPhone. You know, we try to keep the lo-fi thing going. Sure, it's g.co/ChromeVR. And that has some examples that should work in the latest version of iOS, the one that supports WebGL. And just to show you what those kind of look like, I think the network's pretty stable. So this is what it looks like in the browser, just so you know you're at the right place. So here I'm in a helicopter flying over the Great Barrier Reef, sort of thing. So as the video loads, it'll go through it. But this is what you'll see on the phone's browser when you load it up in the device. So just really quickly, yeah, I'll run the art project teaser video really quick. I know most of you have probably seen it already if you've come to one of these talks before, but we try to get as much mileage out of videos as we can. but this was a video that we released for the second round of the art project at 150 collections. Currently, we're up to about 630 live partners in about 3 years, and we've got quite a few more kind of queued up and ready to go. So what the Cultural Institute does is provide tools for the cultural sector. Any nonprofit with a copyright-free or copyright-cleared collection can participate. We're in 63 countries, I think, at this point. And any kind of archive, library, cultural institution, kind of accredited cultural institution can participate. It started initially as 3 separate projects within Google. An art project, which focused on museums, archives, which were really kind of country-specific projects initially. So Nelson Mandela, Yad Vashem were coming to Google and asking what it was that we might be able to do to help put things online. We figured out that along with the World Wonders project, where we send the trolley around to do captures, I'll show you a video of what that looks like, of World Heritage sites, all of those could really use a common infrastructure. That all of that material was pretty much similar enough, and the data requirements were similar enough that we could build a common stack for that. To give you an idea of the timeline just really quickly, we've been growing, like I said, rather, well, not exponentially, mind you, but still very quickly, with a number of partners and number of assets that you can find on the site. Also a big milestone for us when December of this past year, we launched a lab in Paris. So there's now a physical lab space where we have engineers and artists working together in an artist residency program, as well as a place where we can prototype a lot of our hardware, which is actually where the cardboard came from. The site, in case you haven't seen it, just going to run through a couple of quick slides. Each of the collections has its own folder where they can upload as much content as they'd like, in terms of audio, video, multi-page documents, images, any kind of content like that. On top of that, they build exhibits, which I'll show you also in a second, but the idea being that the hosting is all free and the institutions can use it however they see fit, in terms of however they want to represent themselves. The geographical distribution, this was from a couple of days ago, it's pretty much what you'd expect. The eastern US doing a little bit better than the western US, Europe all over the place. Asia's been fantastic. We've been focusing quite a bit on Japan and China, Korea this past year. Still spotty in South America, and Africa's still a bit of a problem in terms of finding partners that have robust connections, online connections basically. They might have their content digitized, but they don't have the wherewithal to maintain and upload all that material. So to run through the projects really quickly, this was the street view of the World Heritage sites. We have everything from, this is Scott's hut in Antarctica. We do the interiors as well as exteriors of those spaces. And to give you an idea of what that looks like when we do a capture, this gentleman on a boat in Venice is wearing a backpack where we basically have strapped the street view camera to his back, and we make them go around to these wonderful places. So when you see the street view of the museum interiors or outside spaces, it tends to be either a trolley that's about 6.5 feet tall that someone just pushes along through any open floor plan that the institution invites us to, or if they're a little bit more out of the way, it tends to be just a guy with a backpack kind of walking through that environment. So a lot of those images that you'll see later on have just been captured this way. So we have about 200 at this point, Street View collects, of museum interiors and exteriors. The kind of most traditional would be something like Versailles. That's actually one of the Chrome demos, or the cardboard demos that I'll show you in a little bit. As well as, again, museum exteriors like the Sculpture Park in Brazil, Taj Mahal, and the White House, just to give you kind of the range of places. The other thing that we've been focusing on is gigapixel photography, so super high resolution photography of single objects. Up until now, it's been single objects. So to give you an idea, again, a very familiar image, I think, to everyone, and that's the kind of detail that we get to on the objects themselves. The capture of Starry Night took quite some time. It was overnight, and just to give you an idea of the technical challenges, the vibration from the subway, I think it's 3 or 4 stories down, was enough to actually shake the camera enough that we had to restart the process a couple of times because it was just too much. I personally thought it was a bit of a gimmick until I actually saw this piece not too long ago. It's this pre-strobe from Vienna, mid-15th century. And this is a pretty good online image, you know. This is maybe a bit better. You can get a bit more context, to get more material out of it. You can tell different stories. But then when you get this close, and it was the curator that was telling us the stories about, you know, the individually wrapped threads and the pearls and where they were sourcing these from, you know, and again, this is Austria, 15th century. It's like, what, you know, how exactly did all this come about? The stories you can tell with the high resolution images is just, they're very different by comparison to what you could do with something like this. You know, I could tell you the same thing, or I could actually, you know, show it to you in an image like this. And really, it's the same thing we've been coming up against over and over, that these massive canvases, normally we deal with 2D objects, but there's all these little stories and vignettes kind of built into them that you can really tell in a much better way. And that's where the rest of the tools that we've been building have really kind of been focused, is in that storytelling vein. Initially, the art project started out as a 20% project focused on those gigapixels, on doing super high resolution photography. But what we figured out is that institutions have a lot of those images already, and they're able to put them online, but what's still missing is that exhibition, kind of special exhibition website component. That everyone is going out to design agencies and redesigning it every single time and rebuilding it and spending a lot of money on, you know, IT infrastructure to maintain those. A lot of institutions of moderate size just don't have the resources to focus on that time and again. So we built a few tools that kind of help with that. This is one of the early versions where it's kind of a film strip presentation at the bottom. You drag and drop the panel structure, and then you drag and drop content from what you've uploaded into those panels. So everything from, you know, Image and Sound Museum in Brazil, National Library of Ireland, National Archives and Records Administration has joined not too long ago. They've been focusing a lot on presidential libraries. This came out of the LBJ Library focusing on the Civil Rights Act. This is a more updated format where they're pulling documentary images from their archives as well as primary source material focused on, in this case, the Little Rock Nine. So again, picking anniversaries that otherwise it's just sitting in a little vitrine in the hallway, and now they're putting it online in a very kind of polished way. I mean, it's not necessarily the most customizable tool, but at least it's something that they're able to reproduce and use easily. And when you start putting all of these together, this is what you see on the site. So for example, for Versailles, which will come up again, we have exhibits over on the left that the institutions build. You have all of the street view of the interior and exterior, and then all of the museum objects and collections that they've contributed. And what we've noticed is it's kind of nice where all of the institutions, they tend to put highlights from their collection online. So Vermeer is the go-to example that we always kind of pull up, where, what is it, 17 at this point? Of the 32, 34 Vermeers that there are. Every institution is very happy to let everyone know that they have a Vermeer. So when you start putting these up, they become these like catalogs raisonné of the artist, and you can start seeing patterns, and you don't have to know where all of the objects are coming from necessarily to be able to start pulling them together. The tools also that we were building, this came up yesterday actually when we were talking about comparison tools, that it's possible to do that with any two objects on the site. These are some of our favorite examples where it's a sketch from the Cooper Hewitt and the final painting from Philadelphia, or a sketch of the bedroom in a letter from the Morgan Library versus the final painting, and things like that, where people are finding these connections, you know, across institutions without any kind of coordination. So I mentioned the lab. I'll actually start another video where you see teasers of some of the hardware and technology, along with a lot of very happy nodding heads at a big party in Paris.
Bienvenue et bonsoir à tous. Installer l'Institut culturel ici, au cœur de Paris, pour nous, c'était une évidence. La France est le Silicon Valley de la culture.
So I'll pause it at various points really quick just so you get a sense of the, I'll have still images later, but the video still has some great stuff. This is the display wall that we've built there. What it is, it's a tiled set of 4K backlit projectors. 50, I'm looking at Julian here, 53 feet long, more or less. 20, yeah, okay, 50 some feet wide and maybe about 20 feet tall. Basically what we're doing there is you can kind of make out these little slits down here where there's also connects, ways of interacting with the display wall this size. Trying to figure out what happens when you actually have an entire space that you could put, you know, any image on or any size image on or entire collections worth of
honored
material.
to open this building today, the lab at the
controlled with
Cultural
a
Institute,
tablet
alongside
as
Madame
through the
Fleur
connects,
Pellerin.
but we're kind of
I believe
evolving this
engineering
into
and art
kind of a system that
involve
could be modular, so you don't have to
experimentation.
have the
To
50
me,
by 20 foot
it
space.
is a
You can actually do it
natural
on
progression
2-3
for
displays.
Google's engineers to join forces with the cultural sector.
Le gouvernement se réjouit de ce choix porté sur la France et de la reconnaissance de la vitalité de Paris comme capitale non seulement culturelle, mais aussi technologique. Merci beaucoup.
So in the background there, you can see over on the left is the art camera, the new version of the gigapixel camera that we've been working with. Some of you might have already seen it at your museums. It speeds up the gigapixel process without necessarily costing us a lot in terms of the image quality. So rather than spending 9-10 hours on a single image, you can wheel that into the galleries with optional side lighting and actually just do it on site and just get those images as quickly as you'd like. And in the middle, you'll see the trolley, fully extended with the camera at the top. So there, I'm going to back it up a smidge, sorry. This is the hardware component of our 3D scanner, which also I'll show the results of a little bit later. There's a light scanner, a structured light scanner that basically reflects off of the object, which we'll see in a second, and then a regular camera that captures the textures. There's a turntable where we place the object as it spins around. It takes basically photographs and builds the 3D model as it spins. There's a limit, of course, on the size of the object that we can handle this way, but this again is a kit that we're working on in the same way that we are with the art camera. The hope would be that we would ship this to an institution and they're able to use it to build 3D models quickly and, again, well, for free in terms of partnering with us. The idea here is that it's possible to upgrade either one of those pieces of hardware as it goes, so that we can keep iterating on the quality of the 3D models. So there's that turntable spinning around with that cow in the background. So if anyone from your museum is passing through Paris, we're more than happy to host anyone. Or if anyone needs an excuse to go to Paris, here you go. We're happy to host everybody. But again, this is the display wall with one, it's not more than 2 or 3 inch vertical piece of one of the gigapixels that we were kind of pulling up on for impact. And basically at this point, just to run through the Cultural Institute features, there's, like I said, the enhancements that we've made most recently focus on the ways that you can use your own content back on your own site and the other kinds of things that you can do with it rather than just pushing it all to the Cultural Institute. There's a way you can set up separate domains, so syndicating your content to places off of your own website. So if you are a small museum that doesn't even manage its own website necessarily, you can set up a separate domain with the content that you're uploading. You have more control over that. Embedding, it's possible to embed single images. I'll show you a detail shot of that, as well as the street view or any of the exhibits back on your own site. We're making content more discoverable across the rest of Google. So if people search for your material or a particular artist, it comes up in other ways in search, so people don't have to come to the Cultural Institute to find it. We have a mobile app that people are building audio guides and street view tours. All of it, again, is free. The material that you upload, you can use just for the mobile guide. There's no requirement that it has to be on the Cultural Institute site. And again, like I mentioned, the art camera kit as well as the 3D kit. So the embedding, this came up quite a bit in yesterday's conversations. The ability basically to embed the street view, and down below is what you see is the actual image viewer straight off of our site. We don't add any additional Chrome, no heavy kind of design features. We try to make it as lightweight as possible so you can put it anywhere on your own website. We're talking to a couple of people who want to replace their existing kind of image zoom viewers with the content that they're uploading here. And again, discoverability. In search, you'll notice depending on what you type in, over on the right side of Google search results, there's a knowledge card. And in that knowledge card, we're trying to populate more and more information that's coming directly from the Cultural Institute. There's a way now from Google Maps, if we have the indoor street view, you'll notice a See Inside button that pops up in the results of the knowledge panel. So you can go straight from looking for the museum to being inside the galleries in just one click. And over on the left is something that we're trying out with Google Now, knowing where you are and giving you location-based results from the collection. So you're visiting a city and you want to pull up that, it lets you know that there's a piece of art from that collection nearby. Yeah. Some screenshots from the mobile apps. These are live. We launched with a handful of Brazilian partners a few months ago. There's going to be another launch fairly soon of both French and Italian partners. We just tend to cluster in terms of the way that we think about launches, just to get groups of institutions together, so there's a lot of kind of possibilities for collaboration, really. It's a museum-branded app. Google, there's a small little text box in the About section that says it's a Google-powered app. The museum is in charge of its Play Store account, or on iOS, once we release early next year, the iOS version of the app as well. All of the tours, all of the exhibits that they've built, so those things that I showed you from National Library of Ireland or the National Archives, those automatically get formatted to a mobile version and then get pushed out to a mobile app. So again, all of that content, this structure here, is the same as what appears on the website. And then you have Street View content. You can associate audio stops, so people are replacing their audio guides or adding audio tours to content that they didn't have before. The art camera that I mentioned before. Again, the idea there being that you can do it either with natural light in the galleries or with additional side lights. And the 3D stuff. So far online, there's a couple of other spots you could find it online, but I'll show you this one. With the Cal Academy of Sciences, we did a project focused on some fairly difficult models, kind of as a test. Let me pull one up. So this is a cross-platform OpenGL browser, WebGL browser. The full model load. So again, I'm just moving it around in my browser. There's no additional plugins required. It just kind of works, which is kind of great. And again, these aren't, nanoscale kind of curatorial conservation quality images. That's not necessarily what we're going for here. It's much more in terms of access copies of 3D objects that otherwise you just don't have access to, or the backside of this particular skull, front of it for that matter. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The weight of the model depends on the resolution of the scan. So you could really kind of decide how close you want to get to the object, and that'll make for a larger model if you want more detail. These, though, I mean, I'm pulling it up on the hotel Wi-Fi right now. So just to give you an idea of what's involved. But yeah, it very much depends on the size of the object and the size of the model. Well, the size of the resulting digital file, really. But that gives you an idea, basically, of the scanner that we're using for those experiences, anyway, or the kind of output from that scanner. And that's really kind of what we're focusing on at this point, is trying to figure out ways of leveraging the fact that we're Google, and we can kind of do some of this kind of crazy stuff that other institutions individually or even groups haven't been able to kind of do for themselves. So build these tools that a lot of people have been asking for and that come up often at these conferences. Whether it be, again, we'll talk about cardboard in a second, but these massive display walls or 3D modeling and so on. Also focusing on content themes that otherwise might not get a lot of play online. So we did a street art project focusing on a lot of street art. Again, we noticed that there was a lot of material as we were going through cities, and some of the nonprofits that were affiliated with the cities were focused on kind of urban renewal and also just street art in general. And we found a lot of international partners. This was for a launch late last year, where we found a lot of street art in existing street view imagery, as well as sent out the trolley to do more captures of urban spaces. So kind of leveraging the fact that the street view team is going out anyway and trying to find other things for them to look at. The Chromecast thing at the bottom, Chromecast is a little dongle you can plug into your TV or any kind of high-res display. You can also opt in now as a Cultural Institute partner to show up on the background when the Chromecast is idle. It rotates between things. You can put your own photos up there, news, weather. One of the things you can turn on is art. And we're adding increasingly from the Cultural Institute partners whenever they choose to show their content. So basically on any Chromecast in the world, the collection from, in this case, the Walters, it's going to pop up on somebody's TV. And you can ask your phone, what's on my TV, and then it'll take you to the Walters collections page. So try and figure out ways that the content from the partners is going to keep popping up in interesting places. But cardboard, most importantly. If anybody has questions too, please keep asking. It is different Chromecasts receive different content. Yeah, so there is some localization in terms of knowing what country you're in and things like that. But generally, the amount of content we've started with has been very small. And at this point, the 16:9 ratio, we have another way that we have in mind to kind of pan and zoom for content that doesn't fit that 16:9. But yeah, apparently artists make things other than landscape ratio objects, so something to consider. So cardboard. This is the guy you got to blame or follow or tweet at. So David Cause was in the Paris office and working with, again, really kind of a big fan of VR. So specifically kind of that immersive sort of sense that you have when you're dealing with VR that you either get with goggles or with very large display screens. Because again, we were using the large wall as well as the different format screens that we had in the office. So this is kind of what is available commercially to get you a lot of those experiences already, these big or small kind of head-mounted displays, Oculus Rift being kind of the most powerful, but also tends to be the more expensive one. A lot of stereo vision cameras with separate camera setups and lots of cables that come off the back of your head and all sorts of craziness. But what if we just made a ViewMaster is kind of the idea. This is more along the lines of the kind of spirit that we have in the lab, I should say, and certainly within the rest of the Cultural Institute, that we try to build something that'll work for a lot of institutions and a lot of cases. So it's not something that's as customizable as, let's say, the Rift or as powerful necessarily, but it gives an experience that's easily replicable and easy to kind of hand out. So it started with just some mats and cardboard sheets, and working through those kind of early design prototypes. You can see kind of the inside space of our lab in Paris. Kind of putting together the pieces, in this case piecemeal, to start. We experimented with different sizes, because people have different sized tablets or phones for that matter. Like I said with the iPhone, prop it up with a pencil. It'll work that way. And excuse me, some of the early versions came from pizza boxes and just trying to lay them out. Ultimately, we have a laser cutter that made it easy to kind of figure out, actually plot it out on a sheet of cardboard to figure out how to do it. And again, this is the conference theme, like we brought up yesterday. I mean, in terms of starting small and thinking big, this was exactly that. In terms of, initially it started just as David's project within the Paris office inside the Cultural Institute lab. He convinced people there. Then they went to Mountain View, convinced people there. And then it turned into a thing at Google I/O, which is, I think some of yours might still have the I/O label, the cardboard devices. So again, this is that first production run that ended up being this, if you fold it out. And so the plans for the cardboard, as well as all of the software that you need to both run it and then build applications for it, which you've already seen quite a few apps on the Play Store and also for iOS devices start popping up. You've got that crucial rubber band in the upper left, a couple of bits of Velcro, 2 lenses, a magnet with a washer. The washer basically acts as the big orange button on the ViewMaster. As you move it up and down, it sends a magnetometer pulse that the phone is able to pick up. There's that little sticker, which is actually an NFC tag that tells your phone to switch into 3D mode. So it tells you where to put the phone, but it also does something to the phone as you put it in. And then just the rest of the cardboard. And that's really all there is to it. Like I said, you can print out the plans, and if you can source the material in bulk. In terms of the lenses, I think are still the most expensive. It might be the magnets the most expensive, but altogether at retail, I think it's $11, and you can buy kits online. People are batching them together for I think $19.95 still. But again, everything's for free off of the site. So again, once you put it together, you've got the magnet over on the left. A few of you have it put together and trying it out. Yes, I mean the apps that are built for the Android don't run natively, of course, in the iOS device, but you can take it to. I pulled this up earlier. You might have missed it. The g.co/Chrome VR. If you pull that up in your iOS, the latest iOS version that supports OpenGL or WebGL, there are experiments that do run in an iOS phone, and there are other. There's like a Volvo app that tries to sell the car that also that they have an iOS that they expect you to do it this way and so on. So in terms of how it works, similar to the ViewMaster of old, the idea is that you've got the lenses there that kind of correct for the distortion that has to be there when you split the image in two. I'll show you an example of how that works. But basically, you have to set up that field of vision on the screen in 2 different spots with enough kind of difference between how it's handled for the left and right eye, so that as it's going through, the lens is correct for the distortion that you do in the image displayed on the screen. So this is an old stereogram. It's exactly the same idea with the technology, that if you have it set up just right, you can get this 3D effect in the stereograms. There is an app actually that pulls down something like 40,000 or so stereograms from NYPL that you can actually flip through, that do give you a little bit of this effect if you can squint just right. But the idea being, again, this is the stereogram with the images on either side, and then they're brought together when you put them in the viewer. The idea here being that you start with a 3D scene, and then you split it into those 2 different sites. So it's slightly different for the left eye versus the right eye. And again, this is that kind of distortion that you would get if you didn't correct it. And again, that I think is that magnetometer on the side of the phone. We're taking advantage of all of the sensors that are there. So you'll see when a person clicks, essentially the phone recognizes the fact that we've removed all of the other interface elements. You can't control the volume, you can't control the touch screen, but this is the way that you interact, either this way or by tilting the object or the cardboard. They tried also shake controls, but those weren't quite right in terms of it was a little hard to control or to try to figure out the boundaries between where a shake event was starting and then when somebody was whipping their head around to kind of look at stuff. Yeah. So there's if you look at the cardboard, there's the washer on one side. There's a strong magnet on the other side. So if you actually open that up, if you open up the Velcro and you look on the inside, there's a magnet on the other side that's making sure that washer doesn't fly out. And then you're just clicking, and as you click, that changes the magnetic field, and that's recognized by the phone's magnetometer. So that's what's recognizing as a click event, basically. So for those of you who haven't set one up yet, this is what the cardboard app looks like when you run it. So inside we've built a Street View demo, a Photosphere demo, all of the photospheres that you can take with your phone. You can now walk through them also. A YouTube video player, which is basically just a huge screen in front of your face when you can pull up any YouTube video.
Welcome to the Palace of Versailles, one of the most famous monuments in the world. It contains a total of 2,300 rooms,
the voice talent is one of our
and we
colleagues,
take you on a tour
based in
through
Paris.
its most iconic ones.
So you move
This
from
room
room
is where
to
the
room.
king and the queen had lived.
You move from room to room in this case by clicking a button, and that advances you through the tour. It doesn't have motion tracking in the sense that you can't walk through the space, but you can certainly spin around and experience the full image as you're going through it. So each one of these is a separate Street View panorama as we're going through the spaces. And again, the code to create these, any institution with existing Street View or leveraging any other online components that are already there in terms of the 3D models or an institution's existing Street View could be built into a similar tour so that anyone with the cardboard or with a VR headset could go through and do the same thing. So I couldn't resist. I found a good online version of somebody poking around with it. I'll let this guy run while we do questions at the end.
Ready for the experience?
I'm totally ready for the experience. Check this out.
So
There we go.
he's
Yeah.
modified it a little bit by adding a strap to the back of the cardboard to make sure that it's on his head.
What are you watching?
Oh shit!
The fairy one?
I ran into a wall. Babe, this one's incredible.
So
This is awesome. I just wish I could just.
It sounds majestic.
It's a little blurry. This will be amazing on the Rift, though. This is. Wow. There's bubbles. Whoa. That's making me a little bit weirded out. Everything just stopped. Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Holy shit. It dropped me in on like a planet.
Don't tell me I don't want to know.
No, never mind. I shouldn't say anything.
There's plenty of reaction videos exactly like this one, especially grandmas enjoying roller coasters and things like that. So there's a lot of good stuff. But I'll let him keep freaking out in the back. But yeah, if you have any questions, essentially I wanted to focus on just the broad kind of design process that we went through and the way that, again, people are enjoying it at this point. But again, if there are any questions, specifically around the technical side, I'm happy to answer those in terms of what's involved in the development. But also if there are any broader questions, I didn't want to take too much time. Yeah. Yeah. The question was about whether the magnetometer would work in iOS. I'm not sure if it's built quite the same way, but it works. We're building it into the Chrome browser. So the expectation is that you're running Chrome. And I think you can send that. Exactly. Yeah. So there's still that we have native access in terms of we have control over a bit more in terms of the way that the signals are sent to the browser based on how the apps are built. So. Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, changing things I don't know so much about. That I mean, for us, the 3D side of things, in terms of the fact that we were building 3D models, we had the immersive possibilities of the Street View content, and we kept seeing people try to come up with these kinds of experiences. The idea was to make it accessible to a broader audience, and to make it something that other people could actually try and see and develop in a much wider set, rather than having to rely on high-end technology. Well, the high-end technology is already built into your phone. So one, it's showing off what you can do with an Android phone, of course, or with a decent powered phone. And then the other thing is just opening up the developer community so that they actually try things. The cultural aspect is fantastic too. I mean, just in terms of the connections to education, exposing the content in cultural collections that's otherwise hard to come by. Finding ways to show off 3D stuff. That's in the cardboard demo. It's in the second one, not the tour video, but the exhibits. So this one right here over on the right, the one to the right of the tour, is the 3D models. We have a handful of the models that we've already captured, are built into the Chrome app. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the idea would be that this becomes just one more output mechanism, so that you could publish your collection. Okay, I want these objects on the website, these will be on mobile, these will be on the desktop, and we'll push these out to the Chrome app, or the Cardboard app, for example. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah, there's already a third-party app that pulls the content from the New York Public Library that does exactly that. And the code's already there in terms of as long as you have the images and you can draw the square over the left and the right, and you know where those are consistently, then yeah, the app's already there. You just have to provide new content. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In terms of if you have many layers of the raking light sort of system, or is it? Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen it done for that, but if you could do it in OpenGL, that's really the limitation. If you can do it in OpenGL, it can be set up to work in this on the device. But yeah, we can certainly talk after. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. Can you say a bit more? I mean, the editorial process of how institution. Yeah. We're in a kind of a tough spot when it comes to editorial content in terms of we don't express opinions, we host the material. And we don't write the editorial content ourselves. We always rely on the institution's kind of staff to do the. Yeah. Yeah. It came up in a conversation last night too, that we show up and we're this kind of whirlwind of possibilities in terms of we give you a whole stack of possible technology. We give you an app for free, we give you 3D and Street View and everything else, but you don't have the staff time to really take advantage of all of it. I don't know if we certainly don't have an answer for that. I mean, in terms of, for us, we're trying to get more of the cultural content online. And if the interpretation side, we leave that up to the conservators and the curators. I don't know if, we certainly don't feel comfortable being the ones kind of talking about other people's collections. And we don't know enough about, the Costume Institute at the Met versus the one in, a small regional museum in Japan, or, the Numismatic Society of Athens. I mean, I don't know anything about Greek coins, but, we have to rely on those institutions to do the work. But you're right. I mean, the more content there is to accompany the cultural content, the more places it'll pop up across Google. So it is kind of a tough spot for smaller institutions in particular. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's certainly the case. We started a lot of the partnerships where it's a smaller number of objects, and then as time goes on, where there's a need for a mobile app or again for Street View or something like that, then it comes online 6 months later. It doesn't all have to happen all at once. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, certainly all the traffic that comes to any of the content for the partners, we send all of that back. If they give us an analytics ID, we send all that traffic back to them. The analytics on our site are a little bit, I'd say, artificial by comparison to what an individual museum might be experiencing, just because all we have is objects, and all we have is object data. I know from museum weblogs, a lot of the traffic goes to like, what are the hours? How do I get to the institution? All we have is object pages. So it's just that small like /collection sort of side of a website that we have. So that traffic might look a little different for us than it does for everyone else. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we could certainly start. I think a lot of that doesn't have to be anonymized. I think the trouble comes up when it is a bit of an apples and oranges sort of thing. You've got MoMA on one side and a tiny museum in Belgium on the other. How do you put the two to really head to head? And that's the part that we'd have to feel comfortable that at least we can talk about broad strokes in terms of people do spend a lot of time on the site, a lot of time per object, but again, from one collection to the next, it can be very, very disparate. So. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the trouble comes when we do have a tool that allows for individuals to post to a syndicated site, but not to mix with the institutional content that's on the Cultural Institute. So the same stack of tools is available for individuals or for galleries or anyone else who'd like to use it. But we're keeping this as a separate sort of space. So again, there's a lot of sensitivities around those institutions, and you can imagine that from one to the next, they have very different opinions about who they should be listed next to, and whether or not they need to be next to individual artists, for example, and things like that. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a tool we started working with called Open Gallery. That's how we're still pushing for individual artists to kind of use the same stack of tools that we have here. But the focus right now is still very much on institutional partnerships, just because they tend to have the content that people are looking for, and they're easier to work with in some ways. Exactly. Yeah. Users themselves, actually, that's an interesting point. Some institutions have been asking for kind of crowdsourced or user contribution model of going through their collections. They have a very large one and they need help tagging it, or it's been a small enough number yet that we haven't focused on that component. But yeah, I mean, certainly there's Yad Vashem, for example, wanting to go through their photo archives, or Life magazine kind of tagging their content from their photo collection, things like that. But yeah. In terms of the data, yeah. From the data side, we support Lido as the backend standard. Truth be told, and we'll be talking about this during the conference, that everyone might be aware of Lido, and everyone has a slightly different opinion of how Lido should be implemented, and the value kind of diminishes a little bit for people like Google anyway, people like Google. For a project like the Cultural Institute, maybe would be a better way to put it, that as much as we might want to just say we support Lido and you can ingest everything that way directly, it gets a little bit fuzzy around the edges. So honestly, spreadsheets turn out to be a more common way of communicating between whatever CMS an institution is using and what the backend that we have. So hopefully everybody gets a chance to put their cardboards together. I don't want to take up too much time. It's almost 10, but I hope you enjoy it. And yeah, thanks for coming.